Right. Hey, y'all. Thanks again for checking in with our Coaches Q&A. Today, I have a dear friend of mine, Molly Binetti, on with me today. She's the sports performance coach for women's basketball at the University of South Carolina. Molly and I go back to the days when I was at Rutgers and she was at Louisville. And it's been quite a few years now. But Molly, why don't you go ahead and just let people know kind of what you're all about, a little bit about yourself and what you do right now.
Yeah. Thanks, Marisa. Thanks for having me on too. It's obviously we have a lot of time on our hands right now, but it's always nice to reconnect with you, especially. And like you said, currently at South Carolina, this is my second year here. I work with women's basketball only. So this has been the first time I've transitioned into a one sport role, which has been an adventure all in itself. But like you said, we met when I was back at Louisville. I spent 4 years there learning under Tina in a really unique environment, a lot of different sports. And I started my career at Purdue right out of grad school, and kind of the same thing. I started working with about 7 or 8 different sports there, transitioned to Louisville, kind of narrowed it down to 3 to 4, and then decided to take the jump and transition into basketball only. And it's a really unique opportunity. It's been a really unique opportunity, and I think an eye-opening experience for me in terms of my personal growth. And I think really honing in on who I am as a leader is where I've spent most of my time developing in the last 2 years, especially. And I would say, actually, I don't spend a lot of my time learning and reading about strength and conditioning anymore. I spend it learning and reading and practicing how to be better with people and how to lead people better. So that's where a lot of my time has been spent. And I think through my experiences here, it has really helped me grow in those areas. And obviously our season got cut short within the last couple of weeks. So a lot of my time right now has been spent reflecting and trying to lead our team and connect with them through a really emotional, transitional time for us as coaches, but especially for them.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we could definitely get into that a little bit more later. But right now I want to talk about, Purdue, Louisville, South Carolina. I know personally at Louisville, I mean, Tina was not only an excellent leader, but an excellent manager. And she really forced you guys to learn. I really think I think what I know outside looking in, you guys were some of the best ones to really apply sports analytics and science into the strength and conditioning realm. But can you talk about maybe 2 or 3 things that you took from Purdue that helped you at Louisville, and then a couple of things at Louisville that then had shaped you and molded you to be who you are today at South Carolina?
Yeah. It's always fun to kind of reflect back on, where our career started. And I think I consider myself really lucky to have been exposed to so many different environments. I started as a freshman in college, just observing at Marquette and working in the weight room there, worked in the weight room at Minnesota, and then Purdue, Louisville, and now South Carolina. So being exposed to so many different environments, and then also so many different leadership styles. I think I spent 1 year at Purdue right out of grad school. I was 23. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was thrown and kind of thrust into an environment where our director had a really hands-off approach. And so I got to come in and just get thrown into the fire and learn by just doing and making mistakes and learning from my colleagues around me. But I was like, I had no idea what I was doing, which ultimately led me to seeking out a place where I knew I was going to be mentored and given a little bit more structure. And so the opportunity at Louisville came up where, Tina had a position, and it was assisting her with basketball, was taking her softball, which were my 2 sports. I knew Tina to be obviously one of the pioneers in our field, especially for women. I knew that she had the reputation of being hard to work for, but I also knew she had the reputation of being a great mentor. And so I had to take the leap in hopes of finding a place where there's structure, finding a place where I could learn from an amazing staff and just have that structure and have that growth. And I knew that I guess what I learned as I went through that experience, spending 4 years there, is if I could work in that environment and be successful there, I knew it was going to set me up for a career in any direction that I wanted to go. And like you said, we had a really structured approach to our staff. We had one facility for all of our Olympic sports. So there were about 10 or 12 of us coaches in one facility. We had very structured professional development and staff structure and a very systematic approach to everything. And there's no doubt, you know, Tina, the way that she managed and the way that she wanted our staff and our department to run was, you know, second to none in terms of professionalism, the way we went about our business, the way we tried to kind of raise the bar for our industry as a whole. And so coming from Purdue, where there was really not a lot of structure, and then getting thrust into an environment where all of a sudden I had to relearn everything. I felt like I was thrown into an environment where I'm trying to learn Chinese and I had no idea. Like, I felt like I had never learned a thing in my life. So it's really eye-opening in that regard. And I probably grew more in those 4 years than I have like up the rest of my life. It was really difficult. I'd never failed like I had failed there. I'd never experienced just that type of environment. So there are times where I'm like, man, like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I don't know if this is what I want. I don't know if this is the path that I want to take. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
But I do, sorry. We have a guard dog on our hands here. I knew if I stuck it out, I knew if I dealt with the failure, I figured out how to get better. I figured out how to, sorry, 1 second. I'm here. I know, it's okay. I knew I was going to be set up, and I knew I learned to always be 10 steps ahead. I learned how to think in ways that I never thought before. I learned how to lead people. I learned how to organize. I learned how to be professional. I learned what it meant to really take our profession to the next level and standards upon which we operate. And so I knew by the time I left there and this opportunity at South Carolina came up, it was a chance for me to take everything I had learned up to that point and take something and completely create it as something of my own. And that was a big appeal of this position, was that it was, you know, I'd have the autonomy and the freedom and the responsibility to make all the decisions and really create a program and create it for myself and take all of that. So, so many different lessons learned. It could be a really long conversation, but I think I will be forever grateful to Tina for just the experience that she created there for me, and allowing me to grow in a way that I had never experienced before. And then take it here and really come into an environment again where I'm the one making the decisions and I'm the one creating the structure. So back to where I'm creating it now as opposed to it coming down from somebody else. It's been a really cool learning experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do want to dissect a little bit of what you said about kind of your experience at Louisville, and you really honed in on failure. And I really hope that there's a lot of young coaches that have the chance to listen to this, because, you know, most careers, especially strength and conditioning, only because that's what we know, like, there's going to be a ton of failure, and it's how you're going to embrace it and like learn from it and move on. And I think that's where gratitude comes into place. And I think it's one of those things, like, I think you should confess that you never failed as much as you did there, but you also learned the most when you were there. And I really think that is something that a lot of young coaches have to understand, that it's not easy. And if you don't feel like you want to quit 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 times, then like you're not growing. And I think I read that. I'm always bringing up memes on Instagram, but like I read that somewhere where it was like, if you never feel like quitting, then you were never challenged to begin with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's crazy. I look back and I'm talking about like, even like from the smallest failures all the way up to like I think of times where, and it's funny too, because our field is so broad and there's so many different coaches and ways to do things. So like I came in and obviously I had been taught a certain way, and then I come in and I'm trying to coach. I remember specifically, I'm trying to coach a step up, and I'm working with women's basketball. So Tina takes, like, that was her baby. like she built that from the ground up, and I'm coaching one of our athletes on a step up, and I didn't coach it up to her the way it was supposed to be coached. And I remember getting reamed out in front of the team, everything. And and I didn't even know that what I was doing was wrong, but like I didn't do it right. And I was like, shit, okay, well. And then I remember Tina was gone on vacation, and I had to take over like a few days worth of basketball workouts by myself. And this was probably within the first couple of months of me starting the job. She definitely didn't trust me to do it, and made sure there's a lot of people like reporting back on how I was doing. And I did not lead the group. I did not have a presence. I was nervous. I was scared. I mean, we got through the sessions, but like me as a leader and as a coach, like failed. Like I did not do a good job at all. I think of, being able to like times where I'm trying to lead a group, and my messaging and the way that I'm speaking to our athletes, and I'm not portraying the confidence or the certainty that I need to. I think of being late on deadlines I needed to submit. I think of literally times where I'm in her office and I didn't do something right, but I'm sitting in her office in tears. Like I can count on numerous hands how many, but then also receiving the guidance from her as to how I change it and how I get better. And I do remember, like within the first year and a half of me being at Louisville, I was like, there were jobs that came up. There were jobs that she recommended to me. Like she's like, hey, this is open. Like if you're interested, we butted heads, and her and I can say that because her and I have the relationship, and she knows how much our relationship evolved over the 4 years. But like the first year and a half that I was there, I was like, what am I doing? Like, do I even know how to coach? Can I do this? Do I want to do this?
So let's so what were some of the either coping mechanisms or people that you look to, or like what were some of the things that got you over that made you last past that year and a half, and those things that made you be there for 4 years? Like what were some of those things? Because I think a lot of young coaches need to know that like you're not in it alone. Like there's other people going through what you're going through, but there's a way for you to get clear of that faster if you do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I think first of all, to be honest, like I had a really, like it was a very vulnerable experience for myself, because I had to really sit with the fact that, that I wasn't where I needed to be. And so I had to take a look in the mirror and accept that. And I think that's one of the hardest things that we struggle with as coaches, right? Is like letting our ego simmer down a little bit and realizing that we may not be showing up as the coach that our athletes need us to be. We have sometimes a hard time really looking at what our weaknesses are and like actually addressing them, and not just looking at like growth as just like a checklist of like, yeah, okay, I read this and I did this and this is what I'm doing to get better. But like, no, like actually looking inside yourself and figuring out, okay, what do I actually need to work on and how am I going to do it? And I am really thankful because I came into that position at Louisville as the only person that Tina had hired externally. Everyone else on staff had been there either as a grad student and then they got hired on full time. They did a GA position and then stayed on full time, or they'd been there for 10 plus years, or they're all really well versed in how things were done there. And so a lot of people around me to help guide me and show me the way. And I mean, everybody on staff had a different leadership style. And so they all understood what was expected of us. They all understood how Tina wanted things done and how I needed to grow and get better. And they were there to help kind of, okay, take the roughness off some of the things the feedback that I was getting, and like really put it in perspective for me as to, okay, like, hey, like we're here to help. This is what needs to happen, and this is how you can do it. And these are the steps you can take to start making the improvements and start making the changes. So if it wasn't for the support system that I had, I think within our staff, if it wasn't for having a support system even outside of our staff and having just an outlet and a way to just erase it, because I think as a young coach too, your whole life is consumed by your position. Like we put ourselves right on the grind and working harder and longer than everybody. And like realistically, like that's not how it should be. But during that time, I think we have a hard time separating our lives from our careers. And there's a lot of overlap. But like I think really learning early on to separate the two. And when you get home, like, yeah, there's stuff you can work on. But if you're not taking the time to like reset and recharge, it's going to lead to a lot of stress, a lot of burnout really early on. And I experienced that. But I think it started with just more of like an internal evaluation. Like, okay, like I'm clearly not doing what I need to do. I need to sit with that. I need to accept that. And then I need to figure out how the hell I get out of it. Because if I don't do it myself, nobody else can save me from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talk about separating your life from your career. Is there, for the people that don't know you, like, do you have a passion or a hobby that kind of has helped you reset, recharge, and kind of something that you're doing outside of everyday work?
Yeah. There are a lot of things. I think one thing I've learned too is like our identity is not based on what we do. And I think strength coaches do have a hard time with that. So much of our life is engulfed in what we do. So I had to spend some time really figuring out who I was, like at the core, like take away any external circumstance, a job, a location, all these different things. Like if I'm left with nothing, like who am I? And starting with that and like what I valued. And I mean, things outside of work, like I place a really strong emphasis on the relationships that I have and staying connected and truly connecting with people. I have a dog, so
Wait, you have a dog?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard, but I got her when I was at Purdue, and so she's been with me. It's almost 7 years now. I mean, luckily we live in a really beautiful place. So I've always been somebody that loves to spend time outdoors and connecting with nature, being around water. I grew up in Wisconsin. It's always around lakes and hills and a lot of outdoorsy activities. And in South Carolina, we're close to the beach, we're close to the mountains, we're close to all kinds of things. So we spend a lot of time outdoors. And that's kind of where I recharge. I love to cook. I love to read and learn about things not related to strength and conditioning. And yeah, my family is, my mom is my best friend. She raised me as a single parent. Like I'm super close with all of we have a huge family. We have like a family of 50 crazy Italians, but we're all really, really close. So spending time with my family and away from coaching has been, I think, the biggest, maybe shift in the last couple of years of my career is realizing that it's not what we do is really important and a huge part of obviously who I am but there's a lot more to life than just what we do in our everyday career.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people are recognizing right now that, what's going on in the world with the coronavirus, or as we're now phrasing it as COVID-19. And, how are you adjusting to that personally? Because you did mention on, that human interaction and connection and stuff like that. How are you adjusting to that on a personal level versus with your athletes and your staff, like staying in contact with them as well? Can you talk about those probably new in your life?
Yeah. Personally, it's actually, I personally am an introvert. And when I need to kind of reset and recharge, I do that by myself. So this has kind of been a dream of coming off of being in season. You really don't spend any time by yourself other than when you maybe sleep. So for me, this is a time for me to kind of recharge. And so I've actually been sleeping, and I still obviously connection looks different now. Thank God for technology and yes, the ability to see face. It's so important to see people's faces and facial expressions and hear their tone of voice and be able to like see that and connect it all. So utilizing that has been big, just obviously with my family, friends. I think all of us now are taking advantage of using this time to connect in for different ways, within our profession. But for me, it's really been almost taking the time to not disconnect, but to take the time for myself that I need to kind of recharge and reflect on this past season, reflect on. I think it's a chance for us all to kind of refine, our habits and what we're all about. So trying to create a sense of taking the habits that I already had, and now they look a little bit different, but they're part of who I am. So it's still working out and still reading and still doing all the things that I love to do, but adapting to what that looks like now. And I think the hardest part that we're all trying to figure out is how do we continue to lead our athletes and our teams in this. Obviously everyone keeps using the word unprecedented, and it is, but there's no script for this. There's no prior experience to rely upon. So it's more than anything right now, I think it's just intention over it's perfect. And that's obviously our kids are so used to communicating via their phones and video chat and all of that now. So it's nothing that's new for them, but really trying to speak their language a little bit more. And for me, I think it was giving our team time and space to reflect, to feel whatever it is that they're feeling, a lot of anger and sadness and confusion and fear. And I think as a leader, in these times of uncertainty and chaos and everything going on, they need space to be listened to, and they need space and to understand that you're feeling what they're feeling. And so I think that's been my strategy is listening more than talking. Just it's not talking at them, but and then also letting them know too, and being vulnerable with them about what I'm feeling and experiencing, because let's be real, we're all feeling a lot of the same things. But if we're just trying to dust ourselves off and just keep moving forward, it's not affecting us, I think we're doing our athletes a disservice. So really, I think be transparent, be vulnerable. I'm lucky that I have 12 athletes that I work with, and I have the opportunity to connect with them and know them on a different level. I know their families, I know their parents, I know a lot about them. So finding ways that I can individually connect with each of them on a daily basis or every other day basis in a way that I know works for them, I think is the challenge. And just understanding that it doesn't have to be perfect, but there's still so many ways that we can take advantage of this time to build relationships with them, and then continue obviously focusing on what we need to do moving forward. But I've tried to make it less about we need to keep doing this and be working out. We just came off a 7-month season. I'm not worried about them working out right now, but I do want to maintain those relationships and continue to find ways to build them so that when we do get back together, where nothing is dropped off in terms of what's made our team and our our relationship so special.
I think
it's not my biggest priority.
Yeah, no, I think it was huge. And I think that's a ton of insight and some tremendous advice that you've given our audience here. And, even yesterday I was looking onto, Ryan's phone, and he was on Twitter, and there was a coach on there, and it's hey, listen guys. And he was sitting there with his family, and he's hey, we're going through this too. I'm at home with my kids. This is amazing. But, don't forget about your psychological health, your mental health, and all that, the component that we preach during the year. But it couldn't be more important to let the student athletes know that we are available for them, because there is so much uncertainty and and I also think it's so important not just to give a solution, like you said, just talk at them. It's not about giving a solution right out of the gate. It's about, okay, what can we do to maneuver and navigate this together? And I think that's a huge part. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to touch on or talk about?
No, I think this is, like you said, it's a different time for all of us, but I think it's a chance. I've reflected and kind of like I talked about before, I've spent a lot of the last 2 years focusing on being a leader worth following. And I think as strength coaches, there's a lot of really good coaches out there, and there's a lot of really good practitioners. But what I've realized is that our kids and our athletes don't need people to write better programs for them or teach them how to squat better, but they do need better people in their lives to lead them, not just coach them, but lead them and influence them. And so kind of like we talked about just now, not talking at them, but you can never listen your way out of not influencing somebody, but you can sure as hell talk your way out of not influencing somebody. So instead of, I think we often lead in a way that's accountability, right? It's task oriented. We've got to do this and make sure you're eating right, and make sure you're hydrating, make sure you're working out and all these things. But I mean, our kids, they're 18 to 22-year-olds if you're working with college, and obviously even younger in high school. Like they are not built or wired the way that we are and the way that we think about our lives. Like strength coaches are some of the most disciplined and motivated and like rational people and are always knowledge seeking, right? But our kids are emotional and they're irrational and they care about belonging and they don't care about the things that we do. So how do we find a way to not just talk at them, but how do we connect with their world and what they care about? And it's not about the next thing that they have to do. If we're leading our conversations that way, then we're missing the boat. And just because we're talking at somebody doesn't mean that they're listening, and doesn't mean that we're changing any behavior in the long run. So I think for me, it's been a chance to really reflect on that and find ways to lead and influence in a way that they care about. And I found it's definitely not by berating them with a list of things that they should be doing during this time or working on during this time.
Yeah, totally. No, that's awesome. And thanks for clarifying and kind of like, I think that was a great thing that you said about, you can listen your way out of it as opposed to talking your way out of it. I thought that was dynamite. So, okay, I call these my Corona fire questions. You have one more answers.
All right, let's go. Need more coffee. All right.
So everything applies to like kind of the situation right now. So number one, what is your COVID go-to breakfast now?
Oh, bacon and eggs and hash browns.
So you're cooking full breakfasts as before?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Awesome.
Full breakfast.
Do you have a COVID new activity?
New activity? Meditation.
Nice.
Like actually doing it on a daily basis, yeah.
Okay, so not to be confused with a new COVID habit.
Farkle. It's a dice game called Farkle.
Nice.
My new activity that my roommate and I play pretty regularly.
Nice. We might have to go into a description of that later. Okay. Something that you kind of alluded to this earlier, but something that you took advantage of before COVID.
Before? I think just your everyday luxury, like our privilege, right? Our privilege of just being able to do whatever we want to do and go to the store and go out to a restaurant or bar, and we had no limitations on life. So I think for sure just
limitation.
Freedom of whatever we want to do, like we had the ability to.
Nice. Okay. And what is any new COVID TV show or movie?
Schitt's Creek. I just started that series, and they're like 20-minute episodes, and I'm like powering through them.
Yeah. I can confidently say, not personally, but I can confidently say that you are not the only person that has discovered Schitt's Creek. I can't wait for my coworker to listen to this, and she's going to praise you. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for, coming on here and just giving us a little bit of insight and advice about, what you're going through and, a little bit about yourself. And, I think the audience definitely had some takeaways for sure. So thanks again.
No, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's always good to connect.